be jealous now. Now I'm starting to want glasses.
Well, you don't want them if you don't need them. If you need them, you definitely want them. But if you don't need them, enjoy that fact. Trust me.
Glasses.
Oh, did you really? Wow. Well, I guess most of your people in your family have them, right? Your older siblings have glasses. So yeah.
Our mom and our eye doctor was talking about something, and I was just like, doing glasses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my husband needs new contacts because he doesn't like how they're focusing right now, and his lenses keep falling out of his glasses. Actually, it was funny when we went to California a couple of weeks back, right?
You can't sleep with contacts, right?
I sleep with mine. Some people say you shouldn't, but I have extended where I've been doing it since I was like 16, and I've never had a problem. If I have a problem, I'll have to stop. But mine are meant to be slept in, although a lot of people don't like to prescribe them because they make people nervous. But
so you never remove the
I
contacts.
take mine out once a month and throw them away. I wear them for a month and then I throw them away. But my contacts. But when we were in California, it was so funny. I was facing away from him. We'd just gotten back from like a day of driving. We're going to bed. I was facing away from him, and he put something down on the nightstand at the hotel, and then it hit the floor and it clattered. And he starts like swearing, and he gets up and he starts huffing. I thought he put his AirPods down and like they fell and like popped out of the case and he had to collect them. No, he dropped his glasses off the nightstand and both lenses popped out. So he's blind, trying to put both lenses. Can't see what he's doing. He's trying to put his lenses back. He was mad, and then popped out like 4 times since then. So he's really mad about it.
When you go outside and it's bright, they turn into sunglasses.
Oh, the transitions ones? Yeah, I had those once. Yeah. Because I really need sunglasses. So I had those once, but that was a long time ago. I think I've gotten better.
Yeah. I need to renew glasses now.
Oh yeah?
One of my eyes has astigmatism, and it's farsighted.
Yeah.
And it got less farsighted, and one of my eyes is almost perfect.
Oh, that's fun. So you got one. Which one's the wonky one? Yeah. My left is worse than my right, but I'm nearsighted.
I think my right one.
Nearsighted.
Sometimes I see blurry.
What's your? Yeah.
I think my left eye is worse than my right eye because when I was doing the appointment, I saw more clear with my
You're right. What's your prescription, you know?
It's like four and a half.
Yeah, mine's 4.5 in my right and 5 1/4 in my left. Mine is 4.5, mine is 5 1/4. Yeah.
I think mine is 4.5 and 4.7.
You know what happens when you get older? This is really weird. Actually, I see it right now. I have one in my right eye right now that bugs me. But when you get older, you can get these things called floaters. And basically like the tissue that's on the inside of your eyeball, you know, you're constantly making like new skin cells, right? And it's always sloughing off and then you get new and you don't even notice it. Well, it happens in your eye too. And the tissue inside your eye can kind of slough off, and then you get these little like clumps of dead tissue and they float around in the liquid that's in your eyeball. No, they float around in the liquid in your eyeball, and you see this dark spot float through your field of vision. It just floats along, like if you blink, you can make it move because you've caused pressure and it changes the fluid. So like my husband got him a couple years ago and he's like, what is this? So we have a friend who's an optometrist and he's like, what is this? And he was like, oh, you're just old, it's just floaters. And now I've got one in my right eye that if you concentrate on it, you can see it. If you stop thinking about it, you don't see it anymore. Your brain takes it away. Just like your nose, like you can see your nose all the time, but your brain takes that out of your processing. So you don't think about it. But
I think I've gotten a black spot, like I saw a black spot moving like that.
Yeah, it's weird.
Sometimes I see like it, sometimes like I see circle with like multiple black spots, and the spots are moving almost like a portal or something.
Oh, girl, that's trippy. Okay. I don't want to be in there. That sounds weird. That must be weird. Is it weird?
Big sunlight, you close your eyes, you see this kind of yellow.
Oh yeah.
Stuff.
It's just you can see the light through your eyelids. Like your eyelids can perceive. You ever done the thing where outside in the bright light and then you come inside and everything looks like weird green? Yeah. Yeah, that's fun, right? Yep. You want to know another really weird one? So my father-in-law had this happen to him, but if you're older, you can get cataracts sometimes, and that's like the lens in your eye can like get hard and it clouds over. It's not clear anymore, so it's blocking some of the light and it makes your vision not so great. So my father-in-law was a fighter pilot, so he always had perfect vision his whole life. And like he was getting really concerned with this cataract. So they did cataract surgery. So they take your old lens out of your eye, which is actually kind of a hard thing. They take it out and they replace it with a prosthetic lens. They pop that in and now you have clear lens for the rest of your life. And you just walk around with this little prosthetic lens in your eye. Well, what happens to some people, and this happened to my father-in-law, the cataract is filtering certain wavelengths of light. Some wavelengths get through better than others, but blue has a hard time getting through just because of the wavelength itself. So it has trouble getting through. So your brain, though, because the cataract forms slowly over time and more blue wavelength gets blocked over time, your brain knows, like, for example, that like this is blue, and your brain knows what that color is because it sees that same blue every day. So what it does is your brain adjusts to the amount of blue wavelength you're getting. So those colors don't change until suddenly that lens is replaced with a new one, and now all the blue comes in and then everything looks blue. And it's not your eye, it's your brain. So your brain has to adjust because everything. All right, well, I'm not sure where Lucy is, so we'll go ahead and start. Maybe she'll come, maybe she won't. I didn't hear anything, but that doesn't mean anything. So lesson 31. So this lesson, and then next week we have a lesson, and then what do we have for lesson 33? Review for finals, and lesson 34 is? And then we are done, and it's summer, gang. We are almost there. So that means we have only one more lab today. Well, after today. Today's lab, and then lab 32, and then that's your last lab. And today's lab is the fun lab where we're doing like a game. Next week's a fun lab where we're going to be, isolating and looking at our own DNA, which is super cool. And then after that, it is just review game, lots of competition.
So will they be taking blood?
No, not blood. You're going to use a buccal. So it's like a buccal swab, similar. You're going to use go put your lab. If you have lab 30, be sure you turn it in. But you're going to be using your epithelial cells, squamous epithelial cells inside your cheeks. So you're just going to be like swishing around in your mouth, and you'll collect all those cells, and then you're going to be spitting, and then you'll be taking all that and putting some certain solutions with it that will then cause that DNA to just completely isolate on its own, and it'll look like a big white blob. It won't be very pretty, but it's cool. It's really cool. All right, so lesson 31. Carbohydrates and lipids. So we're talking about biomolecules now. So organic molecules and now, biomolecules. And these are
See a thing.
for lesson 31. I think all it was to watch.
Was it this?
Yeah. Today in lab. That's that. Here you go. Here. There wasn't a whole lot for y'all. The other class has some more stuff. Okay, so carbohydrates and lipids. And I'll tell you guys right now, if it's not in the review materials, it's not going to be on the final. So be sure you go through all your reviews and you'll know what out of this stuff is going to be included, right? So do your reviews, do your all your games that are available, your Jeopardy, do your the packet. I think one of you girls, Emerson, I think your packet is in Lost and Found. Your review packet. So be sure you have it and be sure you go through it. All right, carbohydrates and lipids. Does anybody know what a carbohydrate is? What you think, Annabelle?
They are in foods, and they give you energy and keep you alert.
Yes, carbohydrates are found in foods.
Are compounds of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen made by living things.
There you go. So chemically speaking, carbohydrates are naturally occurring compounds or a derivative of that compound. Derivative means like made from that compound with a general chemical formula of some number of carbons. See how it says CX, some number of carbons. We don't know how many. H2O, and then Y. So in this case, what we're saying is the Y is going to be like what we call a functional group. Remember last week we talked about how you can add these you get these molecules and then you can add like little hats to them. So that's kind of what the Y would be in this case. It's like a hat. So with a lot of these molecules, they're going to be very similar in structure. And then there's this little thing called a functional group added on. And that's like, if I put on a cowboy hat, I can be a cowboy. Now, if I put on a chef's hat, I can be a chef, but the main part didn't change, right? So it's some number of carbons with hydrogen, oxygen. And then they are the most widespread organic substances. So of all the organic molecules that you can find, the most common are carbohydrates. If you look outside right now, probably 95%, 96% of what you see in just your field of view is carbohydrate. There are going to be some things that aren't, like there's some metal out there on the porch.
It's carbon.
Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Yep. So there's some things out there that are not carbohydrate, like there's a metal pole, there's some other stuff going on, but everything, all the things that are out there in nature are all full of carbohydrate. And they play a vital role in life. As Annabelle hinted, carbohydrates give you energy. Carbohydrates break down into sugars and things like that. So yes, carbohydrates can provide energy. If you're looking for carbohydrates in your diet, it's things like bread, right? That's where you find a lot of pasta.
Protein?
Not protein, nope. So some people will say, oh, I'm cutting carbs from my diet because they're trying, because if they give you energy and then you don't expend all the energy that you eat, all of the energy calories that you eat, then what happens? Your body is going to turn the extra energy and store it as fat. Because here's the thing, our bodies don't know that we aren't living in hunter-gatherer times. Like our bodies don't know that. Our brains know it, but our bodies are not wired that way. So if you eat a bunch of bread and pasta and all of that, and then you don't burn those calories, your body's going to turn those calories into fat and store it because it thinks that there may be a time in the future where you don't have access to food and you're going to need something to survive off of. That's why we have like such an obesity problem in the US, because a lot of our foods are very high in carbohydrate, very high in sugar, and very high in fat. And that's kind of the diet we've become accustomed to, but it's not suited for how we are evolutionarily geared to function. So carbohydrates are structured in a certain way. Carbohydrates mean hydrates of carbon. So we have to talk about what hydrates mean. What do you think hydrate might have to do with? Energy. If you think about, if you say,
Hydrating.
yeah, what does it mean to hydrate yourself?
To like fill up your thirst.
Drink more water, maybe? So we might be dealing with water here, right? Remember how
my mom told me, you just drink water, you're dehydrated.
you're dehydrated. That's right. So hydrating is to add water. So remember we said that carbohydrates were carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, so carbon with water. So that's what it means. It's a hydrate of carbon. It's carbon with water added. And the generic structure of a certain number of these, and then you have there's your water right there, H2O, right? So that's what you're dealing with. They are classified into three subtypes. So we have three subtypes of carbohydrates: monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. And we're going to talk about what those mean in a minute. We're going to break those words down. So monosaccharide, what does mono mean? One. Mono means one, right? Can you think of a word that starts with mono or has mono in it that might mean one? Monochrome. I said that to you this morning when you walked in, didn't I? Yeah, monochromatic, I said, meaning like one extra color. So she's got a base and one extra color. So she's white and then black. So monochrome meaning one, right? Can we think of any other mono words?
Mono.
Can you think of any? Mono. So it means one. And then does anybody know what sucker means? Do you know? Yeah.
Sugar.
Real close. Real close. Anybody else want to guess? It's real close to sugar. What do you think?
Cane.
Sugar cane. So it means sweet. And you might actually see that root word used linguistically. So in language, you might see it might describe someone speaking in a saccharine tone, meaning they're speaking very sweetly. Sucker, yes, yes, yes. So it's very similar. Yep. So sweet, that is saccharine. Okay. So one sweet. So what do you suppose then a monosaccharide would be? One what? You said it. One was the first sugar. Very good. So the most common of which is glucose. What is glucose? Where do you find it? Anybody know?
Blood.
Do you know?
Sugar.
It's a sugar. You said it.
Find it in
You
blood.
find it in your blood. Your glucose is your blood sugar. When you go to the doctor and sometimes they'll check your blood sugar, they're checking your glucose level. So the number of carbons usually ranges from 3 to 7 in a monosaccharide. So a monosaccharide will have one sugar and it'll have 3 to 7 carbons. Now, most monosaccharides end with a suffix. What do you suppose is the suffix? Oh, okay, that's fine. Looking at that word glucose, what do you suppose the suffix is? Ose, right? So there's also maltose and dextrose and lactose. Anybody heard of lactose?
Yep.
Yes.
Some people are what?
Lactose
Lactose intolerant. What is lactose? It's the milk sugar. It's the specific sugar found in milk. Now, here's a question. Like, if you drink lactose, does the lactose get into your blood? No, it gets converted into glucose, but it's still a monosaccharide. Okay, so your body will convert these other sugars. Maltose, for example, is found in grain, things like that.
And if you don't have enough glucose or lactose, if you don't get enough lactose converted into glucose, it means you're lactose.
Yes, yeah. And your body doesn't do real well with it. Yeah. And it makes you very sick, right? And that and part of what that is we'll talk about this next year in biology, but there is a homeostasis situation where your body wants to have, hang on a second, your body wants to have, like, say you have 30% salt over here in this part of your body wants 30% salt over, 30% would be way too high, I'm just using a number. Or, such and so, a certain number of sugar over here concentration, it wants the same concentration over here. Well, if your body's not converting that lactose into glucose and you have too much lactose inside your intestines and there's not the same amount on the other side because it won't convert, your body will pull water into your intestines to try and dilute the amount of lactose in your intestines. And then what happens when your intestines are full of water? Yeah, you know it.
Yeah,
Major diarrhea, right? Yeah, that's what happens, right? That's part of what happens.
So I sometimes I eat lactose with I have lactose with every meal.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that I shouldn't be lactose intolerant or it's more risky?
So you mean, so are you lactose intolerant? Does it make you sick? Does milk make you sick?
No, I used to have a skin allergy.
Oh, well, allergies are a little different. Allergies are a little different than this. This is more of an intolerance. Allergies are a different, it's a different function, a mechanism in your body that's different. So it's a little different. So
am I more likely to become lactose intolerant?
I don't think so.
Exposed to lactose?
No, actually, sometimes the more you expose yourself, the less it's gonna, your body can kind of adapt to that. All right, so then we also have, if the sugar has an aldehyde group, which is the functional group attached to it, then you'll call it an aldose. And if it has a ketone group, which is its functional group, you'll call it a ketose. And depending on the number of carbons in the sugar, they also may be known as trioses, 3 carbons, pentoses, 5 carbons, or hexoses, which is 6 carbons. So you can see here's glucose, there's your blood sugar, that's what it looks like, and it's a hexose, meaning it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. Here's your functional group right here at the top. All right, so then we have disaccharides. We know what saccharine means. It means sweet. What does di mean? 2. So if we had a monosaccharide and now we have a disaccharide, which would have 2 what? Sugars. Now look at these. They aren't chains, are they? Nope. They're not chains. They're rings. Okay. So during this, let me see, 2 monosaccharides undergo a dehydration reaction. So you take 2 monosaccharides and they undergo dehydration, which means they're going to lose a water molecule. And that means they come together and they form a disaccharide. And during this process, the hydroxyl group of one monosaccharide combines with the hydrogen of another, releasing that water molecule. And then you get this ring, a covalent bond formed between a carbohydrate molecule and another molecule, in this case, between two monosaccharides. What do you suppose you call that bond? Did anybody want to guess? You may not. It's called a glycosidic bond. Oh boy, there you go. Glycosidic bonds, also called glycosidic linkages, can be alpha or beta type. This is why organic chemistry is so much fun. Alpha bond is formed when the OH, which is hydroxide, right, group on the carbon 1 of the first glucose below the ring plane, blah, blah. Beta bond is formed with the hydroxide group on the hydroxyl, actually, group on the carbon 1 is above the ring plane. So yes,
So the two most recent generations are us, Gen Alpha, and then the newest generation that's happening this year is Gen Beta. Did they name those after the scientific thing?
I'm sure they did. Yeah, those are your Greek letters. All right, so what do you suppose this? We have mono, di, and poly. Poly means?
Lots.
Many, yes, many. Very good. I had lots of answers there. So a polysaccharide means many. So this is a long chain of monosaccharides linked by those glycosidic bonds we talked about. And the chains can be either branched or unbranched. This one would be unbranched. This one would be branched. And they contain different types of monosaccharides all linked together. The molecular weight can be 100,000 Daltons or more. So these are big molecules, depending on the number of monomers. Okay, when we're talking about monosaccharides linked together, another word for that type of unit where you have bunches of units linked together are monomers. Remember last week we talked about polymers and monomers? Monomers are the little one units. Polymers are when you put them all together in a chain, because mono means one again. There you go. So examples of polysaccharides are starch, glycogen, cellulose, and chitin. All right, chitin is interesting. Well, first, let me tell you about cellulose. Cellulose. Does anybody know where you find cellulose? Anybody know what our common vernacular term for cellulose is when we're talking about diets? Fiber. Cellulose is found in the cell walls of plants. Okay? It is the structural part of the plant, and you cannot digest cellulose. So when you eat a lot of cellulose, it helps you go to the bathroom, right? Like they say, keep your fiber up, right? Because you can't digest it, so it allows for bulk in your intestines, which makes it easier to poop. But here's something interesting. What animal eats wood?
Wood.
It's a tiny little animal, little bug, eats wood. Do you know? We have problems with them in Georgia. Everybody has to have a special insurance bond on their house for them because they'll destroy a whole house.
I know the name, but I'm
Little white termites. Termites eat wood. So do you suppose then termites are special in that maybe they're an organism that can digest the cellulose? The cell walls of plants, they eat wood, right? You would think they could digest it. They can't either. They have an organism in their digestive tract.
They can eat your whole house.
They can, all the wood. They have a microorganism in their digestive tract that can dissolve the cellulose. They can't digest it, but the microorganism that lives inside them can. So that's interesting, right? Chitin is similar, except it forms the cell walls in fungus, not plants, but fungus. So like mushrooms, mold, things like that. You know where else chitin is found? This is wild to me because it seems so unrelated. Chitin is found in your cell walls of fungus. It's also found in the exoskeletons of insects.
When you said fungus, it made me think of mellow mushroom.
I love good mushroom. All right, so we're gonna just look. This is like a flow chart. You have carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates. Here are your monosaccharides and disaccharides. Over here, these are your polysaccharides and something we call oligosaccharides, which are 3 to 10 sugars, and polysaccharides are less than 10 sugars. So really, if you've got between 3 to 10, we're going to call you, more than 10. So 3 to 10, we're going to call you an oligosaccharide, and then poly is if you have more than 10. But technically, these are all. So if you look, under simple carbohydrates, monosaccharides, you have glucose, galactose, and fructose. Fructose you get from apples, bananas, oranges. It's your sugar coming from fructose. And then, let's see, disaccharides, examples would be lactose, there's your milk sugar, sucrose, that's your cane sugar, the like sugar, white sugar that you pour in your tea or whatever, maltose, and trehalose. These are all different. Oligosaccharides, you've got raffinose, stachyose, and verbicose. And then polysaccharides, starch, glycogen, and dietary fiber, which is cellulose, like we said. Starch, there it is. Chitin would be over here too, but I think it's gonna actually no. Yeah, I think it's gonna fall. It's a good question. Where does chitin fall? I don't know. It's not on here. I think it falls over here though, on this side somewhere. So carbohydrates, some more about them. Condensation. Okay, I think we may have talked about this a little bit last week, but condensation in this case has to do with adding water. Adding a water molecule to an existing molecule. So you have your monosaccharides, and they can be combined to form larger sugar molecules called disaccharides or polysaccharides. And the reaction in which the simple sugars combine to form the larger ones is called condensation, because you have to take that water molecule out for them to fit together. It's kind of like, well, I should have brought down a Lego. Imagine you have one of those Legos that is 4 nubs long by 2 nubs wide, 4 by 2, okay? And then on the other side, you have one of those 2 by 2s, little square ones stuck on it, right? So now you've got a Lego that looks kind of like that, right? It's got one standing up on one side. You can't stick another 4 by 4 on top of it and have it fit. You have to take that 2 by 2 out. That's like taking the water out so you can keep stacking.
What's your Hogwarts house?
Hufflepuff.
So nice.
There you go. So it's called condensation because a water molecule is generated in the process. If you're adding water to it, it's called condensation. And it's so you're hydrating it. So it's condensation to add the water. So sometimes you have to add another water so that you can then fit that next 4 by 4 on top. Sometimes you can take that water away. Okay, so carbohydrates, hydrolysis. Do you remember when we did a lab called hydrolysis? What did we split in that lab?
We split it, we split in water, and then we took hydrogen and oxygen.
Right, we split a water. So the reverse of condensation is hydrolysis. If you add another 2 by 2 to make it fit, that is condensation. If you take it out, it's hydrolysis. I'm gonna see if I can find some Legos so I can show that to you. All right, so the polysaccharide or disaccharide is broken down into their constituent monomeric parts or sugars known as hydrolysis. It's called hydrolysis because what is needed to cleave the glycosidic bond? What do you think? Water. You need water to break the bond. And then the reaction mechanism for the condensation reaction is the exact reverse of the reaction mechanism for the hydrolysis. All right, lipids. Moving on from carbohydrates. Now we're at lipids. Anybody want to define lipid for me? What do you think? Lipid. What you got, Eunice? Do you have it?
Lipids.
Looking. Looking.
Yeah.
I'll help you. Lipids are any class of organic compounds that are fatty acids or their derivatives. So we have these things called fatty acids. When you combine them together or take parts of them off, start messing with them, mixing them up together, you have lipids. Lipids are non-polar. Can a lipid be dissolved in water? Lipids are non-polar. Can a lipid be dissolved in water?
No.
Why?
Because they're not polar.
Right, and what is water?
And water is polar.
Water's polar, and like dissolves
Like.
like, right? So if you're going to dissolve a lipid, what do you have to dissolve it in?
A non-polar.
Another non-polar substance.
Or
Ladies in the theater, do you wear grease paint? You wear oil-based makeup on stage? No? You wear water-based makeup? You can take it off with water? Have you ever had to use cold cream to take off makeup? Or any kind of baby oil or anything to take off? You haven't done real grease paint yet then. Oh, that's fun. I have that stuff. So yeah, so you cannot dissolve lipids or oils in water. You have to dissolve them with other oils, right? If you're doing oil painting, you can't, that brush won't rinse in water. You have to use another solvent. All right, so always remember that. So insoluble in water, but soluble in what we would call an organic solvent, certain non-polar solvents, non-polar solvents. And those include things like oils, waxes, and steroids. Okay, oils, your skin produces oil, right? Where do you get wax? Where does your body produce wax?
Here.
In your ears. You get wax in your ears?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then
But
bees
sweat
make a
is
real
also-
wax, like actual
What
wax. Sweat's more water-based, but the oil on your skin is not, right? Why does your skin make oil? What's the purpose?
To keep you from.
We talked about it earlier, actually.
We did.
Yeah, it helps keep you hydrated because that water can't evaporate out of your skin if you've got oil on it, right? And then lotions have oils, you add them to them. And waxes, I get really dry skin. I can get eczema, and I have a lotion it's a very specific lotion, but it has white paraffin in it, which is a wax. It has tiny particles of wax in it. So when I put that on, it locks all the moisture in my skin and doesn't let it evaporate because there's wax forming a barrier, right? So waxes and steroids. What's a steroid? Anybody know?
Steroid.
Anybody ever had to? Is it?
Music?
No.
Is that?
No. Do you know?
Is it a compound?
It's a compound. So steroids are in your body, and they're often produced by your adrenal glands produce some. There are molecules that help your body do certain things, and sometimes you need to take synthetic steroids as a treatment. If you have inflammation in your body, they may give you cortisone or corticosteroid of some type, and that will help your body fight inflammation. So steroids, and then there are also anabolic steroids, and those are the kind you hear like athletes using. You ever hear about athletes doping or using roids? And they will take those steroids and it will help them like get really strong and get really fat. But it's like a whole cheating scandal actually in certain sports.
Smell a type of salt and then they get boosted up.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, so steroids, there's those anabolic steroids are a little different, like testosterone and stuff. Sometimes people will take that. And there's something called roid rage. There are some athletes that will, like weightlifters and stuff, that will take anabolic steroids, which are just a type of steroid, to help them gain weight, get bigger, get more muscular, but then they can get really angry and aggressive. They call it roid rage. Yeah, you don't want to do that. So structural formulas of some of these lipids. You've got triglycerides, phospholipids, and then a steroid down here, for example. And then you've got this right here. Okay, this is important to understand. This is a phospholipid molecule. So if you look, it's got a hydrophilic head, which is polar. Hydrophilic. What's phila mean? What's Philadelphia mean?
Oh, wait.
Anybody know? Do you know?
Cream or
Do you know what Philip means? Philadelphia is the city of what?
City of Pencil.
Brotherly love. Philos is where we're getting this from. It means love. And then what's phobic mean?
Metaphobic.
Avoiding, afraid of. So you have a hydrophilic, a water-loving head, and a hydrophobic or a water-hating tail. And you can form this type of layer, a lipid bilayer, a phospholipid bilayer. This is what your cell membranes look like. So your cell membranes look exactly like that. They have a phospholipid bilayers. That's how they're constructed. All right. So let's talk about proteins now. These are big molecules. By the way, I'm covered in neurotransmitters, which are the type of molecules that allow your body to communicate. Serotonin, dopamine, those types of things.
Dopamine.
Yeah, these tell you how you feel. You know, whether you need to panic, whether you need to calm down. That's what these are. Communication.
Play a lot.
Neurotransmitters. Yeah. So now proteins. All right, protein. Anybody want to define a protein? You got it?
Two definitions. One is a substance and one is a protein.
A big molecule, and there are proteins and foods, and it fills you up and like keeps you going, like yogurt.
Yeah. What do you think, Eunice?
Proteins are formed by condensation of amino acids.
Amino acids. Okay. Proteins are large organic compounds made of amino acids. They are arranged in a chain, and then they are joined together between the carboxyl atom of the amino acid and the amine nitrogen of another. So that's how they fit. Proteins are so long that they're folded up like origami. If you take a flat piece of paper and fold it up into a little origami crane, you recognize it as a crane because of the way it's folded in its shape. And that's exactly how proteins work. They're folded up, they're so long. And they are composed of amino acids. So the bond that holds proteins together is called a peptide bond. And the sequence of amino acids in the protein is defined by a gene and encoded in the genetic code. And this is what you're doing today in lab. Your body is full of proteins. And when we eat protein, we talk about meat and stuff like that generally, right? Or sometimes dairy products. They have good proteins in it, but you actually have proteins. Yeah, beef, sure. But you actually have proteins everywhere in your body, right? And all of your proteins in your body are coded for using a genetic code. And there's the reason my eyes are blue is because there is a specific sequence, a specific set of genes in my genetic sequence that tells my body to make certain proteins that end up in the end producing that color. But they do it in sets of 3. So you'll have a chain of letters, basically. We're going to do letters today in lab, but it's a chain of nitrogen bases in your DNA. And those chains, every 3 letters codes for an amino acid. And then when you put amino acids together in a certain order, then you get your protein. So, yeah.
I heard that people with blue eyes rarely get myopia.
Merely get what?
Barely get eye issues.
Eye issues? I don't know. I get some, that's for sure. I'm nearsighted, so I'm myopic, and my grandfather had blue eyes and he got macular degeneration, and my husband's got a little astigmatism. He got blue eyes. Yeah, she does. So although the genetic code specifies, how many do you think amino acids are in our genetic code? How many do you think our bodies can code for? What do you think?
20.
Close, 20. Okay, yeah. The residues in a protein are often chemically altered in a post-transitional modification. Therefore, before a protein can function in a cell or as part of control mechanisms, blah, blah, blah. This gets a little deep for you guys. Proteins also work together to achieve particular function, and they associate to form stable complexes like other biological macromolecules, which means what? Big molecule, right? Such as polysaccharides and nucleic acids. Proteins are essential parts of all living organisms and participate in every process within cells. Many proteins are enzymes. Remember what enzymes are? Natural catalysts that make certain biological or biochemical reactions faster or easier, right? They lower that activation energy. And those are vital to your metabolism, which is basically your internal engine, how you run. Other proteins are for structural things, like in your cell, you have a little structure called your cytoskeleton inside your cell. And then you have all of your organs, all of your systems, everything in your body is all made of proteins. They are also important in cell signaling, immune responses, cell adhesion, the cell cycle. They tell your cells when to divide and reproduce, when to die. They're also a necessary component of our diet, since animals cannot, here's the important part, animals cannot synthesize or create on their own all of the amino acids that are necessary to produce the proteins you need for life. You therefore have to consume them in your diet, which is why you should always be sure you're eating a nice variety of proteins so that you get all of the stuff you need, because you can't make all of it on your own. You have to bring some of it in. All right, so we're good, Eunice, we got a few more. So through the digestion process, animals break down ingested protein into free amino acids, and then we can use them for protein synthesis. Proteins are formed by condensation of amino acids. There they are. Look at those. And the form and function of a protein depend on its 3-dimensional shape. Like I told you, they're folded up. Look at that. They start out as a chain, and then they get folded into all of these different shapes, and that's how we use them based on their shape. So you can have them, they call them primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structures. Gets very complex. So here are some proteins in your body. Proteins in your immune system, right here, antibodies that fight invaders, complement system, the system of 20 protein molecules that are activated during infections. Proteins in your muscles, actin and myosin, which allow your muscles to contract. Myoglobin releases oxygen to your muscles. Ferritin stores and releases oxygen. Then you've got cytoskeleton within your cells, keratin in your hair, skin, nails, that is a protein, keratin. You've also got collagen, provides strength. Collagen is you have more than one collagen, by the way. You have dozens of types of collagens. So when you hear about people having connective tissue disorders, so these are things like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Sjogren's syndrome, those types of things. Those are connected to, like lupus. I have lupus, connective tissue disorders. It is very likely that it's actually a specific protein type of collagen, sorry, that is malfunctioning. There's collagen 4, collagen 12, there's lots of collagens. And eventually, my doctor thinks, and I think he's right, eventually they're going to stop calling it rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma. They're going to stop calling it by its name and call it by the specific collagen. It'll be like collagen 7 disorder, because that's what's causing the problem. Elastin, that provides flexibility. Elastin is what allows your skin and joints to stretch. Interestingly, during pregnancy, a woman's body produces more elastin. It does this because all of your joints will become stretchier and more flexible during pregnancy, even though you feel like a whale and you don't feel like stretching and expanding. It is so your pelvic girdle can stretch and expand for birth. Interesting, right?
Yep.
Then you have signaling proteins like cytokines, which communicate with other cells, like these types of things, neurotransmitters. You have proteins in your blood. Hemoglobin transports your oxygen. Fibrinogen, clots in blood. Albumin, which is like kind of the liquid part of your blood. Then enzymes, cell membranes, all these things are proteins. So lastly, I'm going to show you this absolutely fabulous Amoeba Sisters. Do you remember the Amoeba Sisters? We've seen them once or twice before. They're really good. They made a biomolecules video years ago, and then they updated it in 2023 with newer information. So this is your biomolecules for your Amoeba Sisters. No, there's an ad first. Yes, actually they are. They really are sisters. Yep. Okay, yeah. Move on. Can I skip this ad? There we go.
Think for a moment about your favorite food. What is it? We all have different food preferences, but food is a source of large molecules that are needed for life, called biomolecules, also known as macromolecules, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. In different types of food, you might find higher amounts of these biomolecules. For example, peanut butter can be high in both proteins and lipids. And while we'll mention examples of foods that contain different biomolecules in this video, this is not a video on nutrition. This is a video on the classes of biomolecules and their importance to the structure and function of cells, and therefore also to the entire organism, because organisms consist of these cells. Before we get into details about the 4 biomolecules, we need to talk about one very important vocabulary word. The word monomer. Monomer is a building block. If I had some large substance, the parts that make up that substance are called monomers. With each biomolecule class, we will mention its monomer if it applies. We'll start with the biomolecule class of carbohydrates. Generally, food sources such as bread, pasta, fruits, and vegetables tend to be high in carbohydrates. The monomer of a carbohydrate, remember that means the building block, is the monosaccharide. One example of a monosaccharide is the sugar glucose. Glucose is a pretty big deal considering it's used in cellular respiration to make ATP, an energy currency. If 2 monosaccharides, such as glucose, are combined, you get a disaccharide. For example, put these 2 glucose sugars together and you get the disaccharide maltose. By the way, a lot of sugars have that OSE ending. Glucose, maltose, lactose, sucrose, fructose, I could go on. The ending OSE can be a carbohydrate glue. If you join a lot of monosaccharides together, that can combine to make a polysaccharide, a big carbohydrate. So how are carbohydrates important to an organism and the structure and function of its cells? Well, plants have cell walls of carbohydrates, specifically a large one known as cellulose. Fungi have cell walls of carbohydrates too, specifically one known as chitin. Fun fact that carbohydrate chitin is also what makes up the exoskeleton of insects. We mentioned glucose is used to make ATP. That makes carbohydrates a fast source of energy for cells. So that's a big function for carbs, major energy source that cells can access. That energy can be stored in a polysaccharide form. Remember, polysaccharide, big carbohydrate, such as starch for plants or glycogen for animals. Next up, lipids. Lipids include fats and oils. Examples of food sources could include butter or olive oil. This is a seriously diverse group, meaning there are a lot of types of lipids. There are triglycerides, there are phospholipids, there are steroids. These are just some examples. Most, but not all, lipids have building blocks of glycerol and fatty acids. One thing though that lipids generally share, generally they're hydrophobic, or at least contain a significant hydrophobic component. That means lipids, or at least a major component of them, don't like water. Lipids generally won't dissolve in water. And that's interesting, is generally the other biomolecules will. So how are lipids important to an organism in the structure and function of its cells? Remember how we said all cells, plant cells, animal cells, all cells have membranes? Well, thank you phospholipids for that phospholipid bilayer, because that's right, lipids make up cell membrane structure. Lipids have a major function of being a source of long-term energy storage. You remember how we said carbohydrates were a fast source of energy, but when those carbs are used up, lipids have a function as long-term energy storage that an organism can use. Lipids are also very important for different types of insulation. The insulation may involve helping a cell carry an electrical impulse. For example, this myelin sheath made of lipids that can be found on many neurons. Or the insulation may involve temperature regulation, so thermal insulation. For example, the blubber on this adult carp seal is made of lipids, helping it conserve heat. Another cool function about lipids, many lipids act as hormones, which are chemical messengers for many different processes. Next up, proteins. Protein food sources include beans, meat, nuts, and eggs. The monomer of a protein is an amino acid. Usually proteins consist of many amino acids bonded together. There are different types of amino acids. So how are proteins important to an organism in the structure and function of its cells? Structure-wise, tissue like muscle tissue consists heavily of proteins. Proteins can make up all kinds of other structures, hair or collagen, for example. Proteins can also be found embedded in cell membranes as protein channels. And channels are important to that cell membrane structure with functions of letting certain substances pass through. Proteins can also be receptors, which are critical in cell signaling, so cells can coordinate actions together. Most enzymes are made of proteins. Remember, enzymes can build up or break down substances in all kinds of metabolic processes. Antibodies, which are made by immune cells in your body, are proteins, and they are involved in protecting your body. In some critical hormones, such as insulin, are proteins. And when we start talking about genes, genes are made of DNA, but many genes do code for proteins. And that brings us to our last one that includes DNA, nucleic acids. Nucleic acids include DNA and RNA, which we'll get to in more depth when we get to genetics. Nucleic acids have a monomer called a nucleotide. That's going to be an easy one for you to remember because nucleotide sounds like nucleic acid. By the way, you might wonder, are nucleic acids like DNA and RNA found in my food? And the answer would be yes. Whenever you eat something that came from something living, it actually could still have DNA inside it. For example, when you eat a strawberry, you're actually crunching all the cells that made up that strawberry. And in the nucleus of all those strawberry cells is DNA. Any type of life, like plants or animals or fungi or bacteria, they must contain nucleic acids like DNA to direct the cell's activities. How are nucleic acids important for your cells? Well, most of your cells contain all of your genetic information in the form of nucleic acids, DNA and RNA, and this is needed for the coding of your traits. Traits involved in structure and various functions. Okay, so we just did a very general tour of 4 biomolecules. Before we go, I just have to marvel at biomolecule structure because it's absolutely beautiful. So if I arrange them in the order we did, Carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. How might we remember the major and most common elements in them? There's a popular mnemonic known as CHO, CHO, CHOM, CHOM, although it's CHOMP with an N, to help me remember the C for carbon, H for hydrogen, O for oxygen, N for nitrogen, and P for phosphorus. Does that mean you won't find other elements in the biomolecules? Of course not, but it's important to understand the arrangement of these elements and biomolecules because the structure of the arrangement greatly impacts their function. You
We
can
also
learn
talk
more
about
in our
schnops at the S and sulfur, and that's the
Well,
most
That's
common
it. for
elements in
these
all living
exercises,
things.
And we remind you to stay curious.
All right, so we are now, here we go, ready for lab. Oh, your homework is gonna be to tell me what your favorite proteins are for eating. Should be fun. All right, you guys, you can come on in. Turn this off. Maybe it wants to go. Maybe. Don't touch anything yet. Welcome back, Colin. Okay. This is taking a year and a half to shut down. There you go. Okay. Zoom is not playing nicely. Maybe.
What is the starburst thing?
Hold on. Hey, wait a minute, I didn't tell you to do that yet. No, wait, you're jumping the gun.